Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm very excited to have Tania Elfersy with me today. Tania's mission is to help women transform their experience of midlife change. She is an award-winning author, speaker, transformative coach, and founder of the Wiser Woman Project. Tania has spent years researching what causes and what can relieve the emotional and physical symptoms associated with perimenopause and menopause. She also shares her personal story of how she became free of her own range of symptoms simply and 100% naturally. Welcome, Tania, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Lovely to be here, Del.
So I always love to find out, how did you first come across the principles?
Yeah, it's funny because I had heard about the principles. Someone who's now become my friend used to talk about them a little bit, and I was like, I don't understand what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. and I just never investigated further. And then I was doing an online business course, actually, and the woman who was running the course talked about the principles, and I thought that was very interesting. And I went and bought Michael Neill's book, The Inside Out Revolution. And before I'd even finished the book, I had a life-changing insight, actually, which was able to clear up all the symptoms I was experiencing at the time, which were physical and emotional symptoms commonly associated with perimenopause. So that was sort of mind-blowing. Wow. How I had spent years searching for a way to feel like myself again. And then just through an understanding of the power of thought, essentially that was what I saw at the time. All my symptoms cleared up within days. So that said to me that there was something very special in this understanding. And that was in 2015. Mm-hmm. And since then I've been learning more and seeing how this wonderful and simple understanding really does help so many people, and especially in my work, helping women at midlife and allowing them to reach a simple and natural way. It offers a simple, natural way to reach symptom relief.
That is, remarkable. So I wanted to hear what that insight was that brought about that dramatic change in you.
Yes, I, at the time, just to give you a bit of background, I had been a stay-at-home. I used to work in technology companies. Then when I had my first child, I became a stay-at-home mom, and we had 3 children. And I had returned to the workplace by publishing a book and co-authoring a book and publishing it myself. And I was trying to sell the book. Now, the book won 4 international book awards and was loved by. It's a book on motherhood, actually, mm-hmm. about for new mums, and it won loving reviews and etc. But I couldn't sell the book. It's like so many authors, especially self-publishers, I just couldn't sell the book, and I began to feel that said something about my worth. So all the time I was caught up in the idea of that I'm not enough. And I used to be the breadwinner, and I used to have a nice salary, and I used to be on top of my game before I became a mom, and all these ideas that used to flow through my head. And every time they flowed through my head, they made me feel bad. And then I thought that meant that they were real. Mm-hmm. And what I saw in my insight was that I just didn't need to take my thoughts seriously, and that life would probably be easier if I didn't. and it seems so simple. And I often say to women, I wish I could sort of copy and paste that. But it doesn't work like that, because for me, I really saw, all my symptoms are being created through me taking my thoughts seriously, and I just don't need to. And with that, all these ideas that used to come through my head and I used to take seriously of me not being enough, me being a failure, me not being able to earn money like I wanted to. All of these ideas it's not that they never came through my head anymore. I just didn't believe them.
Yeah.
And that was just life changing. And it was so simple. It was so simple. But that's really the power of this understanding.
Yeah. Well, that I completely understand, because the same thing happened to me. The same, just sort of just not taking it all so seriously. And I used to have repetitive thoughts about self-worth, and now to just be like, that doesn't mean anything about me. It doesn't, just because I'm having them doesn't define me. They just visit every now and again, and I don't take them seriously. But what
Right.
I can understand all those thoughts that you might have had about losing your identity and self-worth, and when we leave the workforce and become a mother, that's quite common. But what about the physical symptoms of, hot flashes and all the other things that come along with it? How does this understanding help in that area?
Right. So I can say that I started to experience symptoms that we commonly associate with midlife change when I was 43. And I had no idea about perimenopause at that time. Like so many women who come into their 40s, we all think that menopause is a 50-something women's experience. And I don't know why I thought that, but a lot of women do. But I know now why I thought that. But it's just, menopause used to be a 40-something and 50-something women's experience. And for some reason, we've pushed it as a society into a 50-something women's experience. And so we come in and we think, well, that's going to happen when I'm 51 on average, and it's going to take a very short time. But it's not true. What happens is, for most women, is that when we, sometime in our 40s, we're going to start experiencing change. So there are going to be fluctuating hormones running through our body, and our menstrual cycles will begin to change, but often that happens later on in the change. But we begin to feel different, and we begin to experience symptoms. And I was experiencing night sweats and frequent migraines and a lot of eczema and skin outbreaks, and a whole bunch of symptoms. Actually, they just kept bouncing off each other, and like new ones kept forming. And I was like running to acupuncture and taking Bach remedies and trying to do healing and trying to do all sorts of things to try and heal symptoms. And sometimes I could get some kind of symptom relief, but then another symptom would appear, and then another symptom would appear. And the thing is that once I heard about perimenopause, that took me a few years. So then I could see some kind of framework, and I didn't feel so crazy, because I was like, oh, there's something, bigger going on than I thought, because I just thought I was just falling apart, and I had no idea what was going on, just feeling so much not like myself, and feeling sick all the time. And of course the mood swings, well, that was just going on all the time. And I actually was having PMS from ovulation to menstruation. So that was fun for me and everyone around me. And many women experience that as well, this sort of extended PMS. And just as soon as I heard about perimenopause, I was so shocked that I knew nothing about it. And I went and I spoke to my 40-something friends, and nobody knew anything about it. And perhaps today there's a bit more awareness. I started doing a lot of research around it, and I soon understood that even though the dominant narrative that we have in the West is that we get these symptoms because our hormones are somehow getting it wrong and they somehow need to be fixed, that's not actually what creates our symptoms. And so you can actually have two women with the same patterns of fluctuating hormones, and one woman will experience symptoms and another woman will not. So what I began to understand was that the fluctuation in hormones that occurs during midlife change, and it can take up to 10 years, that creates a sensitive time for symptoms to, it enables symptoms to pop up, let's say, easier, or we're going to experience something that perhaps we would experience mildly, we're going to experience it more on the extreme level. And so it creates this sensitivity where we're much more open to symptoms coming through. And we, like I said, we think, oh, that's my hormones getting it wrong, when actually those symptoms, as I now understand it, are our body talking to us and trying to wake us up. And they point to something that's not in balance in our life. Now, in my life, that was the stress that I was innocently creating through taking the thoughts about the fact that I'm not enough and a failure, and my prime time was behind me, and all these ideas that used to come through my head, by taking all of those seriously. And that was creating a lot of stress in my body. My body didn't like it. So when it came to this sensitive time in my life, in midlife change, all these windows, if you like, started opening. So whatever was sensitive in my body started talking to me. My skin is really, very sensitive. And when I was a teenager and when I was pregnant, I always had like skin problems. And so the eczema that I was experiencing, I'd also had during pregnancy, and sort of wheals that I was experiencing, I'd had when I was a teenager. So my skin started speaking to me, but I thought, I was falling apart. And then headaches started speaking to me, if you like. And then night sweats started speaking to me. And all these symptoms, and then the whole emotional sort of PMS, was my body trying to communicate with me, because our bodies, they can't send us a WhatsApp message or something like that. They can only send us symptoms. And it took me a while to realize what was going on. But when I did, and when I was able to see my innate health and realize that just because a thought passed through my mind didn't make it true, my body was able to relax, because the stress was able to dissolve, if you like. And then my body didn't need to send me symptoms anymore.
Wow. So that's amazing. So as you were talking, I'm thinking about, I think most of our suffering, or certainly mine, I'm talking about mine, and I think I'm like many other humans, but it comes from resistance to what is. It's the fighting it. It's the this shouldn't be happening to me, or why am I, in this situation? And I think that sort of we become quite constricted when we start having thoughts like that, and whatever is going on gets magnified, and actually sort of becomes a bit more solid in a way.
Yeah, I got myself into trouble, if you like, innocently again, because I set expectations for myself. Yeah. I decided that I was going to, I co-authored the book with a friend, and then I went ahead and published it. And then I just pulled out of a hat a number that I thought would be my sales target. And I thought, I used to work in marketing technology companies. Now this is my product. This is going to be really fun, and I'm going to be able to do this. But actually, I was at a time when the whole of marketing had changed, because when I left my corporate career, people weren't using blogs in business. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. So everything had changed. And so I was coming into marketing my own product and thinking, but I actually don't know anything. So now I need to learn from everyone else. And it's very interesting, because it was very different from the creation of the book, which was just about creative flow and going with what I was inspired to do. And it came out beautifully. But then when I came to marketing, I was like, this person needs to teach me that, and this person needs to teach me that. And then I set this sales target, just picked a number. And then when I didn't meet that sales target, then I created the story that I was a failure and I hadn't met my expectation. And on the background of that was this idea that, I'm the kind of woman that always sets targets and meets them. Now, that's not true. I'd made that up by picking out pieces in my life that I said, there you go. I set a target to go and work in this country, and I did, and I got a job there. And then I moved to that country, and then I wanted to buy my own apartment, and then I didn't, and I created this story throughout my life of that I was determined, and I set goals and I met them, and it was made up. Because not every goal that I ever set did I achieve. I just didn't take those ones seriously somehow. And I just moved on. And so here I had created this, I had this story running in the background of Tania's the kind of woman that sets goals and achieves them. And these are my sales targets. And if I don't meet them, then I'm some kind of failure. And by taking that seriously, and that's what's really interesting, because there's like people can say, well, that's a good thing to have if you set, if you think you're determined and you think you achieve goals and you think you're passionate and you get things done, But when you take that seriously too, then you can also get into trouble because then that's your expectation of how your life is going to play out. And then when your life doesn't end up playing out like that, then things like get serious or you think that things get serious rather than just taking, a positive idea of yourself or a negative idea of yourself. It's like it can come in as a neutral thought and it can all be taken lightly. And it's all made up. So.
Well, certainly the stories we tell ourselves are made up. I know that one. and I love, like you said, I mean, we just, we selectively, take elements to build the story. And like you said, it's nonsense because there's many, many times when you had a goal and didn't meet it. But it's like we just remember we remember things to support the story we wanted to tell, I think.
Exactly.
So what's coming up for me a lot is as you're talking, I'm thinking about, so you're saying that a lot of these symptoms that women feel during this time of change, hormonal change, are a direct result of the quality of the thinking we're having in that moment. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Now it could be, we look at the body as a whole. So if there's anything that is not balanced in a woman's life when she comes into her 40s, often, a period of midlife change, then the body is going to do what it can to communicate with us. So for some women, it could just be, cleaning up their diet and they'll get symptom relief. And for others, it will be starting moving again. I'm not saying running a marathon. I'm just saying, incorporating more natural movement in their life. And that could be, that can also be, create a big change in terms of symptom relief. But for so many women who I meet, they can eat really well, get lots of exercise, try and have, healthy lifestyle in general. But if they're not getting to see where their experience is how their experience is created and where their stress comes from, then their body is going to keep on talking to them through different symptoms. And I know there might be some women listening who are like, no, it's definitely my hormones. It's definitely my hormones. Maybe for you, that was like your story, but for me, it's my hormones. And I think luckily, actually, it's really not our hormones. Our hormones are just responding to the situation, in that moment. So if we live in high stress, then yes, our hormones can sort of work in different ways. There's a new chemical balance, let's say, that's created. But it's not midlife change itself and that fluctuation in our hormones that creates the symptoms. It creates the sensitivity. And it's not only what I've seen in my life that I can say that with such assurance. It's the women that I work with who, through just exploring this understanding, suddenly realize, oh, my anxiety is falling away. Oh, wait a minute, my night sweats have disappeared. Oh, I barely feel my hot flushes anymore. And all we've done is explore this understanding of the three principles. And they're starting to see something new. And they're really starting to wake up to the wisdom of their body. So I like to talk about the body's wisdom a lot because there is this idea in the West that women come to midlife and somehow we start malfunctioning. And the reason for that, is normally one of two. Either number one, it's this myth that, oh, we never used to live this long. So that's a myth that's just thrown at women, not thrown at men. But, people say, oh, women never used to live beyond menopause. So that's why we're suffering. And that's actually made up. Women have always lived beyond menopause.
All those wonderful wise crones.
Sorry?
All the wonderful wise crones.
Yes, exactly. And we see, stories of menopausal women in the Bible, in ancient Roman literature, ancient Greek literature. And the reason why they were writing about menopausal women is because they existed. And when they wrote about them, they didn't write about them as freaks. So we can find references to menopausal women. And the average life expectancy that people talk about is actually comprised of an average. And when there was very high child mortality rates, which there were before the last century and a half or 2 centuries, then that brought down, with 1/3 of children not making it past the age of 6, which is what used to happen, that brought down the average life expectancy. It wasn't women getting to midlife and all dropping dead. So that's like one myth that's spread around. And the other one is this idea that women's bodies just naturally malfunction. We're women. We're not the norm. We're the subnorm, the abnormal, person. Because throughout medicine, men have been the norm, and there's a sort of suspicion and fear of women's bodies, and that has created this idea that women get to midlife and their hormones get it wrong and they're malfunctioning. And in fact, in the 1960s, menopause became known as a disease. As a hormone deficiency disease. And that movement, if you like, into treating women with hormone therapy and treating menopause as a disease and giving women hormones for life, which doctors are not allowed to do anymore. But that's what they used to do, because they used to think, oh, well, women, they're malfunctioning and they're going to malfunction for life. So we just need to keep fixing them. Yeah. And that's all made up.
Yeah. And you know what I'm thinking too? I remember saying to my mother once, what symptoms did you experience during menopause? I remember saying to me, it was like, what are you talking about? We just got on with it. It's like it didn't stop them. And I wonder if we somewhat live in a culture where we keep reaching for those outside fixes for everything, and we've pathologized, menopause, when it really is just a natural occurrence in life. But it's that sort of, like you say, that emphasis on it, that it's something wrong, something's happening, that, you're deficient in something and it needs to be replaced, as opposed to seeing it as just a natural flow of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a few things that we can compare that, stand in stark contrast when we compare how our mothers went through menopause, or our grandmothers, and how we're going through it today. And the pressures that we put on ourselves today, just incredible. And that is something that women of our mother's generation, of our grandmother's generation, certainly didn't experience on the most part, when they got to midlife. So there was, even the way we dress, and I'm not saying we need to dress a certain way, we need to change the way we dress or anything like that, but I can quite easily wear my daughter's teenage clothes. I mean, I can't fit into them, but I could wear the same style as she, and no one would think that would be peculiar. And so there is this idea that we shouldn't change, right? And in times gone by, there was a difference between, this generation, that generation. Now everyone can just look the same. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing or bad thing, but the message is don't change, right? So don't change the way you look. Don't change your body size. So make sure you go to the gym all the time, or you work out, or you run marathons, or whatever you do. And lots of people talk about, when you get to menopause, you really need to try even harder to keep the weight off, rather than understanding, well, wait a minute. If people all over the world put on weight at midlife, maybe there's something protective in that. And that's what they've actually found, which is not to say go and be a couch potato, but it's just to say, well, be compassionate with yourself, because if people are putting on weight at midlife throughout the world, then maybe there's something that to say that needs to happen. So we need to look the same, and our bodies need to not change. And that's exactly what hormones does, by the way. It makes sure that the body doesn't change, or, hormonally, keep it as if it's still a 30-year-old. But then also we've got so much more pressure in terms of, I need to keep going with my career, and I need to, be the greatest mum, and I need to be involved in this, and I need to be involved in that, and I need to be on social media, and I need to be all of these things. And that it's what's often now called sort of the mental load, and, also the sandwich of, if we're looking after aging parents and we're driving around, teenage children or, older children. And it's just a lot of pressure that we live under, that in generations gone past, it just didn't exist. So that doesn't mean to say then we need to say, oh, well, then there's no way that I can feel better in menopause because there's just too much pressure in society. No. But this understanding that we're sharing really can help us see something else and see these expectations as a little story that we make up and take really seriously,
Yeah.
and perhaps we can leave on the side. And I hear from so many women, by the way, who say to me, oh, I feel really bad because I used to run marathons and now my body's just telling me to go for a walk. and this is what appears to happen at midlife, is that there is wisdom that gets really keen to come to the surface and guide us in a way that's not only going to help us through this period of change, this sensitive period, but it's also going to protect us for decades to come.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love what you're pointing to, because we can list all those stresses and we can believe that they're all coming from the outside, the expectations that we are career women, then we're mothers, and then we're caretakers of our elderly parents, and all this list of things. But it really is, coming from the inside out. It's how important we take those thoughts seriously. And so it really isn't society's pressure on us, it's our own pressure on ourselves, because we could very easily turn around and say, I'm doing the best I can and it's good enough, as opposed to I'm failing and I'm not meeting this standard or that standard. So I love what you point to. So tell me a little bit about I know you have this Wise Woman class going on right now. It's a program. Tell us a little bit about that and some of the results you've seen from some of the women that have been participating in it.
Yeah, so I do have an online course called the Wiser Woman course. And it's a 3-week program of mainly audio, some videos, some audios, and some fun exercises to do that really awaken a woman to her own wisdom and help her see, through this understanding of the principles, how her body is actually working from love through this time of change, not from a sense of sort of malfunction and it's downhill from now on. Not at all. So I mentioned the wisdom bubbling to the surface, and I think that it is at this stage in life bubbling to the surface all the time. And when we are able to understand the power of thought, to see mind and understand consciousness, the 3 principles, then we are able to tap into this wisdom with much more ease and at greater frequency. And that is going to be key to seeing, oh my goodness, like this is what my body's trying to do. This is how my body's trying to guide me. And it can be such a subtle shift sometimes when you just wake up to that, oh, my body isn't working against me. My body hasn't gone crazy. I haven't gone crazy. This is just me going through a sensitive time and my body, through love, trying to guide me. And so when we understand, for example, that our feelings are always there to guide us and our symptoms are always there to guide us, then it really can be life-changing. So women who do the course, even before they complete it, experience changes that they can't rationally understand. And it's like when, for example, when my eczema all cleared up from an insight and my migraines went away and my night sweats went away, any regular discussion or understanding of what the menopause is can't understand how could that happen just through insight. But women are seeing that, oh my goodness, I feel better, I feel lighter, it's like my problems have just disappeared. How is it that my anxiety just doesn't seem to exist anymore? And it's almost magical, as we know, like when things start to shift. But what we're actually doing is returning to what I like to call the wiser woman inside, who's always been within, and she's just really coming to the surface at midlife to guide us, to protect us, and to keep us healthy beyond menopause. So it's a really fulfilling process to watch, happen. Like it's like this emergence of the wise woman in each woman who participates in the course. Well, so it's just really,
even listening to you talking about it, I can feel my sort of like this just beautiful feeling coming over me. And that's got to affect you physically if you have more of this sort of compassionate understanding of what you're going through rather than the frustration with it. So I just really want to thank you. This has been amazing. Unfortunately, it's quite short, but can you share your how people can contact you and maybe take the Wiser Woman course? How do they get in touch with you?
Yes, of course. They can find that on thewiserwoman.com. So that's thewiserwoman.com. And you can find out their information about the course and coaching that I offer. And there's a lot of information over on my blog that I recommend people to look at and read if they're inspired to, because it really does go into what we've been talking about in much more detail. So I hope women can enjoy that.
All right, wonderful. So lovely to see you today. So thank you so much, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Del.
Take care.